So lately I've been taking a lot of pictures of our pretty orchids that just bloom sort of nonstop. Ever since we went to a class at McHenry County College, before that my orchids either died or they didn't bloom. So this is going to be a little demonstration that shows what we learned at this class so that everybody can have great orchids that continue to bloom. So one of the most critical things is when you buy an orchid, you replant it with this spag moss. Sphagnum moss, what it's called, spag moss. And you can get it off Amazon. And it's the growing medium you have to use. So here's a little orchid that we got today at Walmart. And another critical thing is that it comes in this little plastic cup, and you keep that cup, and it has to then go into a bigger pot as well. So John's going to take it out of the plastic. Okay, now he's going to take some of that spag moss. No, he's going to take the spag moss and put it into the bowl. And then one of the critical things is you have to have water that's not chlorinated. The water out of your tap is chlorinated. So unless you have a filter that takes out the chlorine, it's a good idea to use rainwater. We have a rain barrel, so that's good. And if you don't have a rain barrel, then you can take the water and let it sit for 24 hours and use that. So now John's pouring in the rainwater and getting this moss soaked up. So now it's nice and soaked. So we're going to replace the nasty soil, barky stuff that comes with this orchid. And he's going to take it out of the pot. He's going to get rid of all of that stuff, which will kill your orchid because it just doesn't allow the orchid roots to breathe. So he's going to take and get that stuff out of there. Spread out the roots a little bit. Now, if there were any bad roots there that looked like they were rotting or something, you're supposed to take a pair of sterilized scissors and cut them off. But this one looks like it's okay. Nothing nasty there. Okay. So now he's going to take that little pot. You have to have these little plastic pots. They're very important. Now that has drainage holes in the bottom, right, John?
It does have drainage.
Yes. You have to be sure it has drainage holes. Okay, now you just start taking the moss and the plant and just start stuffing it all in there really tight. So he's going to put some of this moss down on the bottom. Soaked up moss, all full of water. And then he takes the plant and puts it in there. And then he just starts packing the moss in there. Super tight. Super, super tight. So that all the roots have access to water but you don't want, but as it dries, it'll dry out and it gives the roots of the orchid breathing room. So you can see how it's getting packed in there. You can see the roots, and you want to get it so there's no spaces in there at all. So at the class, John actually got to do this in front of the instructor, so he's the expert on packing the moss in there. This is really one of the most critical things. This plus how you water it. I'm going to get a towel because we're dripping a little bit. I'll just leave the camera right here. What are you talking about, Jen?
Well, we're stuffing it really good here. It's amazing how much you can get in there. It will cover all the roots, and it will provide a lot of liquid nutrient from the water for a long time. So this is a very critical point. And don't feel shy about pushing it down. It will not hurt the roots. There.
Okay, so now that the orchid has been properly transplanted into the spag moss, it needs to be put into a bigger pot that'll give it stability. Because if you just leave this little plastic pot around, it'll tip over. Okay, so now he's going to take it and put it into a bigger pot. And this one's done. Okay, now the next critical thing is the watering. So again, what he recommended was using a liquid plant food, which is a 10-10-10. You can see here it says 10-10-10. All right, and what you do is you put like a couple drops into, like this is what, a half gallon? Just a couple drops, very, very little, into your water. And again, you want to use either rainwater or water from the tap that's been allowed to sit for 24 hours. Now, we're not actually going to do this. But what you do to water them is you take the plastic pot out. Okay? And then you water the plant with the rainwater in the plastic. It can be in a pan. You could put it in a pan. You could put it in another bowl. I just put all our orchids in the slop sink, and I add water. This one doesn't really need water, and let them sit for at least an hour, like in the slop sink, to make sure any excess water drains out before I put them back in the pot. So we can pretend we watered this one, left it for an hour, and then put it back in the pot. So the other main thing that they told us is that after it blooms, there's notches on these stems. There's notches. And if you trim it within like 2 notches, there's a very good chance it will rebloom. So you can see on this one, there's a notch, first notch, second notch, and then it rebloomed on that stem. So you don't just need to get new stems. If you trim them properly, which should be with sterilized scissors, they'll rebloom on the same stem. So the main things are the spag moss, very, very important. Soak up the spag moss, then replace the material that it comes in. The second really important thing is the plastic liner pot. All the orchid growers use those. And the third is then to have another pot that's stable to fertilize them or water them no more than once a week with a couple of drops of 10, 10, 10. You don't want to have too much because it'll kill your plant. And then use rainwater or water that's set for 24 hours. And then after the bloom, you trim the stalk, couple of notches up, and it'll rebloom. So that's it. You got anything to add, John?
I think these are very beautiful and they're all over the house. You can just multiply your blooms and have a good time.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.